Hi, and welcome back to Common Core, Common Sense. Today we have Coach Frank Martello to tell us a little bit about what it's like to, or how it's important for our students to play baseball. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, my pleasure.
All right, so how does participating in baseball differ from other sports? Because as a parent, I want to know what my child's going to gain from participating in baseball.
Baseball is a team sport. We offer several in the high schools and in the youth leagues. But baseball is a little different in a couple of ways. First of all, it is a failure sport, which most people don't understand. And by that I mean you're going to deal with failure more often than you are success, both as a hitter and a pitcher. You also, though, will benefit from the team concept and the camaraderie that goes into playing a team sport. And baseball is unique in a way that there is no time, there is no clock. So parents have to be patient. If a game is 6 innings, it may be an hour and a half, or it may be 2 hours, or 2.5 hours, because we don't use the time to keep a starting and an end point. So it is a unique sport in those ways.
You've touched on my next question, which is what exactly does teamwork mean, especially in today's society where everybody's a winner. We're so concerned about student self-esteem and trying to build things up, but baseball is a failure sport. So could you touch a little bit more about that? Because I personally think, not being the perfect person, I think that it's important for our students to know what it's like to be strong in some areas and weak in others. Can baseball help with that?
Absolutely, and as with any task or goal, there's strength in numbers. And we have a saying in our locker room, team and acronym is, together everyone achieves more. And we believe that. And in the sport, like baseball, there are many parts to it. There's offense, there's defense, there's base running. So when I say it's a failure sport, it means you will make more outs during the course of a season than you will be successful to reach base. As a pitcher, you may let up more hits than strikeouts, but in both cases, you're relying on teammates to help you move along and be successful.
You mentioned that games don't have a time limit. What about practices? What kind of time will my child spend in practice, and what kind of impact can I expect on my family?
Typically, in a youth league, you're looking at an hour and a half to a 2-hour practice. Most leagues are very sensitive now to family needs, vacation time, holidays. Baseball traditionally is played in the summer, and you always have the 4th of July to be concerned with. You try to wrap up by Labor Day. Sundays, years ago, were a day off, but nowadays a lot of youth leagues, because of field space, travel, and tournaments, they often use Sundays, unfortunately, to play games. At the high school level, you can plan on a 2 to 3 hour practice. In our situation, it is 6 days a week. Occasionally you'll have a day off or a Saturday to yourself. Games do run a couple hours. Most youth leagues you're playing in the evening at 6 o'clock, 7 or even 8 o'clock. And then of course Saturdays and Sundays are busy at the ballpark.
Wow. So what physical requirements might my child need to have to play baseball? Are there any special strengths or weaknesses
Again,
or sizes?
I'm a little biased toward baseball, but I feel it's one of the last sports that really your size, your height, your weight, not as important as in some of the other sports. And what's going to matter a lot is what you have here in your heart and what you have here in your brain, because it is also a thinking man's game. The physical attributes, obviously hand-eye coordination. Hitting a baseball is one of the most difficult things to do in all of sports. Catching and throwing are absolutely paramount. That's the main basic fundamental in baseball. Most players have a tendency to want to work on their strengths, which means they go and do a lot of batting practice and hit, but they don't work on those basic fundamentals of throwing and catching, which can help them tremendously. Speed is always an asset, but with the different positions on the field that have different characteristics, we believe there is a place for everyone if they're committed and willing to give their best effort.
So if my child's not especially athletic but has a real desire to play baseball, what can they learn? You mentioned it being a thinking man's game. Is there something in there or the camaraderie that would benefit my child?
Physically, naturally, we're talking about hand-eye coordination, the ability to throw and catch a ball, and running speed is important, although it's not paramount. from a mental or psychological point of view, dealing with the failure is what ends up hurting even professional players. 3 for 10, for example, in Major League Baseball is a .300 batting average. If you do that for a period of 15 years or more, you're probably going to go to the Hall of Fame. But when you break that down, it means you made 7 outs. And it is hard for a guy to accept that. In terms of the intellectual side of the game, if someone doesn't end up playing the sport, equipment managers, team managers, and statistician is a very important part of baseball. The scorekeeper, baseball is a statistically generated type sport, and those numbers are very important to coaches and managers.
Good to know. Do you recommend additional workouts to better prepare my child? If so, what kind? Where might they take place? Will it cost me extra?
The age of the athlete is important to consider. Typically, the 12, 13-year-old physically, mentally, socially is able to start handling additional training like weight training, strength training, and conditioning. There are other things that even a 9 or a 10-year-old could do, such as flexibility, stretching, agility work, even plyometrics, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups around the house. Don't cost any money to do and are relatively safe, and you don't need any equipment. At the high school level, you normally will have a strength and conditioning program in the fall. Ours, for example, runs 10 weeks, and we're checking everything from height, weight, all the way to their strength in a bench press, their speed in a 60-yard dash, their cardiovascular endurance in a mile run, and their quickness jumping rope.
Wow, I had no idea. Should I change my child's diet at all to be successful in baseball?
Diet and nutrition nowadays, I feel, get overlooked on most teenagers and preteens. We know about the fast food world, and we know about all the processed food, and because families are busier, or it may be a single parent household, or even as a convenience, we're serving and preparing some foods that maybe aren't as good for children as what we could be preparing, such as your fruits and vegetables. The athlete, again, at 12, 13 years old, will really start to feel that they're running out of gas, that they need more energy if they do get involved in any after-school activity. It doesn't have to be a sport, but keeping the fuel in the body, drinking plenty of water, and a multivitamin is not a bad idea either.
What are the long-term benefits of playing baseball beyond high school or college? And are there any drawbacks my child and I should consider as we make a decision to play baseball or not?
Your playing days are going to end probably sooner than you would like. For some, it is at 13. For others, it may be after high school or after college. Some may reach that ultimate goal of playing professionally. But sooner or later, your playing days will end. And what we find, and myself for example, many of my good friends are either former coaches or former teammates from baseball. So there you have that teamwork element again,
Camaraderie.
and forming friendships and relationships that are going to last a lot longer than the time you play a sport. Baseball has been around in our country for so long, and it is America's favorite pastime. Every generation can go to the previous one and find a baseball fan. So it crosses generations. The drawback, again, is dealing with failure, winning and losing. And because of some of the pressures within the game, depending on the level, and I've seen a lot of pressure placed even on the typical little leaguer, 10, 11, 12 years old, which is a shame that that happens. There are already pressures in the game. I already mentioned hitting a baseball is the toughest thing to do in all sports. If people are yelling at you how to hit, when to hit, and what are you doing, and then a coach is yelling as well, and then the opposing team, it adds to the stress and the anxiety. So a lot of young players will have difficulty with that. So as a parent of a student athlete, you really want to be concerned to any additional signs of stress or anxiousness. make sure that your child's having fun. No matter what sport it is, we have different definitions of what fun is. But if they're not enjoying the time on the field, then you got to find something else to do.
Okay. What about uniforms? How are they provided? Who cleans them? How often? Are there any things that I'm going to have to provide?
In your local youth leagues, uniforms generally are provided by the league, but there would be a fee. And many of the organizations nowadays get pretty fancy, and they'll put names on the back of the shirt or initials on your hat, and everything costs money. Families today are a little more easy when it comes to spending on their child for a uniform or a name, so that it's their own, and then they can keep it. At the high school level, uniforms are furnished by the school, and normally they get returned to the school at the end of the season. Some of those are very expensive. Typical baseball uniform could cost $150 to $200.
Wow.
And you'll also need a hat, belt, and a certain color socks to wear. Those items, the hat, the belt, the socks, the player may end up keeping. The uniform itself, though, stays at the school. The player and his family are responsible for those uniforms at any league, lost, stolen, or damaged. And at the high schools and the bigger programs, you might have an equipment manager. At the college level, you do, that actually takes care of washing and other laundry items for players, which is a really nice perk. But for the most part, it's mom or dad or guardian at home that'll have to wash that uniform.
Yay. All right, let's say my child makes your team. What specifically do you want from me as a parent to support you, to support my child, to support the team? What does that quite look like?
Most parents have a skewed view of what support looks like, and you run into the situation of involvement versus interference. Most coaches appreciate the support, the enthusiasm, and the involvement aspect as long as it's off the field. Anything that goes on in a dugout or on the field is a responsibility of the coach and his staff. So we don't even allow parents near our dugouts, in our dugouts, or on the field. Most youth league parks now are set up and designed so that parents and fans and spectators have to sit in an area a little bit further away from the dugout. That's time for a player to concentrate and focus and not worry about what mom or dad are yelling or asking. In terms of how you can support the program, there are many ways. Even in the local youth leagues, fundraising is important, selling advertisement and field maintenance, and it doesn't end there. That continues at the high school level as well. Fundraising nowadays seems like it's continuous. Field maintenance, baseball again is unique in that the field condition is a big part of the sport, and the maintenance of it is very high. So there's always help needed there. And then, of course, any financial assistance, advertisements, statistician, equipment assistance, those type of things.
I'm glad you touched on finances because that's my next question. What are any expenses I might incur that I might not be aware of right now? Membership dues, donations?
Again, it depends on your area. Typically in the youth league, you've got a registration fee, maybe some additional insurance, especially if a family didn't have insurance. Part of the thing with Little League Baseball traditionally is they would never turn a child away because of money. So there are opportunities to still participate. Some of the change that's occurred in amateur baseball today is travel teams and showcase and tournament baseball. That can get very, very expensive, from as little as $200 to as much as $2,000 for an entire summer. But your local youth leagues keep a reasonable amount. There may be some fundraising to go along with it, a raffle, a carnival, selling advertisement, or a book, ad book at the end of the season. For the most part, high school baseball shouldn't cost you any money, but unfortunately it does. There are areas of this state and around the country that have a pay to participate fee. that can range anywhere from $25 as high as $100 per athlete. That money typically goes into the athletic department and simply helps with uniform costs, travel, busing, and officials or umpires. So it does get to be an expensive proposition. You can count on the fundraising too to help bring money into the program.
For instance, scouting does annual fundraising at particular points of the year. Is that the same with baseball? Is it particular times a year, or is it as a needed kind of thing?
With high school sports, because you have a designated season, and the state associations dictate the communication and the contact you have with your athletes, they wouldn't want you to coach a baseball team and be with them in September, October, and November when your season may not be scheduled to begin in February or March. They feel that that's an unfair advantage. So the fundraising generally is during your season.
Okay.
The problem with that, most of your ordering of equipment, uniforms, and the such has to happen in the fall.
Right.
And a lot of teams get into some trouble financially and need to either borrow some money or get it from the school in order to pay those bills. Fundraising for the other sports also would occur during their seasons. And if your school is fortunate or your youth league is fortunate, there is a booster club or dugout club that raises money year-round for your purposes.
Exactly when is and how long is your season?
In this state, your designated high school season runs from mid-January till about May 1st. Your typical youth leagues also are February 1st, sometimes through July. There are also, because of the weather, fall baseball, which runs in September, October, and part of November. And if you play in a travel team situation or want to head to showcases and tournaments, there literally is an event every month out of the year.
Holy cow.
Which is a big change from the old days when there was a designated season. The thing I would caution players and parents especially, just because a 20, 30, or 40 game season and training program is good, doesn't mean a 60, 70, 80 game, 12-month-a-year program is better. You have to, again, be cautious of overuse for younger athletes.
Right. So is there anything you simply want to let parents know that maybe we haven't covered or that you might not otherwise have a chance to explain to parents?
I think the one thing, again, to emphasize is the player has to enjoy being out there. There have been some surveys done as to why a parent will place a child in a particular sport. We'll use baseball, for example, and they have certain goals and desires that they hope will happen from that. And then if you survey the players, they'll have a completely different set of goals and expectations, whether it's making new friends, playing the sport, or having ice cream after a game.
Right.
And a parent may have things such as getting ready for his high school team, earn a college scholarship, and become a professional player. Very, very competitive, very difficult. So fun is number one. Number two, that they are developing along the way, because you certainly don't want to put a player in a situation where they're going to fail most of the time or injure themselves or embarrass themselves. There are other things that you can do even within the game of baseball. So those are the two main things, and always encourage and be positive. The saying that we have around the ballpark, parents let coaches coach, and coaches let players play.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad that you mentioned fun because I've had fun. I
Very
appreciate
good.
so much you coming out.
All right.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right.